vertical blank.
Hi, this is 8-Bit Jeff here, Jeff Fulton from the Into the Vertical Blank podcast. And today we are going to go through Stos tutorial number 1. In this tutorial, we're going to start with setting up Stos to run from a GEM-DOS hard drive in the Hatari Emulator. We're choosing Hatari because it can be run on PCs, current Macs, and Linux. Future Macs, I'm not so sure about, but right now Hatari can be run on all three of these systems. Now, we're going to set up Stos, and we are going to do a Hello World starting with the Blitter chip. Most tutorials start with some basic stuff. Ours is going to be pretty basic too, but we are going to be targeting the STE in all of these tutorials. And so we're going to start with a Hello World that does some simple Blitter operations. Very simple. Okay, so on the screen right now, you can see that I have a Hatari up, and in the post that's linked to this video on intotheverticalblank.com, you'll find all the details you need to set up Hatari and a GEM-DOS hard drive. And I have a zip of a hard drive that has all of the Stos files organized properly, ready to go, with a folder that you can use to store all the files that we're going to do in these tutorial series, and there already are a couple files in there. One of the problems that I have with using Hatari specifically is that when you move the mouse around the screen, and we have the mouse on here right now, so I'm going to click on OK, and you'll see this is not my my setup right now. You'll see that the mouse moves the screen way too easily. So the first thing I do when I start up Hatari is hit Alt-M. That keeps the mouse on the Atari ST. So what we're going to do now is we are going to press F12, and we are going to set up our system as a basic Stos system for running Stos from a GEM-DOS hard drive. Now I've set up all these things already, but I'll go through them. So go to the link. The first thing you want to do is go to the link that's underneath this video, and in that post there will be a link to download my GEM-DOS hard drive folder that contains everything you need to do to run, and I'll show you this right now. So I'm going to load a config that I have created already, and this is actually explained in the blog post how to do this, but I'll go through each of the settings right now to explain them. So I'm going to load a config that I have called stosste.cfg. Okay, so let's go through this config a little bit. First of all, I have it set to be an STE machine. I actually have the Blitter set to run in ST mode. That was just for fun one time when I was programming in Stos. You can do that. It's better to target the STE though, because you get all of the other STE features. The CPU that we're going to run is a 68,000 at 8 megahertz. The other ones will work, but this is what we're doing right now. The ROM that I have currently set up is I've downloaded, and there's a link to download this in the post that's connected to this video also. It's on the Into the Vertical Blank website, and it shows you how to download EmuTOS 1.0. Now, right now I have it set to use the what is called ETOS 256 UK, and I did UK because I wanted to run at 50 hertz. The problem is that if you do that and you're in the USA, your keyboard in the ST gets rearranged. I'm actually going to change that to the USA keyboard, the USA image right now, so I get the right keyboard. So all you have to do, and this is when you download EmuTOS and you open up the 256K version, this folder contains TOS settings for all of the countries, and I want to use the US one. So I'm going to click on US. That's okay. And then go back to main menu. Then setting up a hard disk. We want to set up a hard disk. so that, and you want to eject all of the ASCII, SCSI, IDE hard drives you have for now. There are ways to add them later. We're not going to do that in this tutorial. And we're going to browse to the folder that I created that's in the zip that's on the Into the Vertical Blank site called Stos underscore hard drive underscore 4 underscore tutorials. In there, I have created folders from all of the Stos disks, and I've also added in all of the extensions that you need into both the compiler and the Stos folder for running not just STE, but also Missing Link, which is an incredible one, and a couple others, including the Maestro, which we will get to use because we probably are going to be combining at some point regular samples and STE samples at the same time. So music can be played from the STE, but we can play sound game samples from the from Maestro. So we combine those two together. So, but we'll get to that. We're not even that far yet. I haven't even created a game that does that. Currently, I only have 2 Stos STE demos, and they're both included in this tutorial folder here, and we're going to get to those in the first 2 tutorials. But for now, we're going to make sure that we have Stos underscore hard drive for tutorials selected. Click on OK, and then we click to go back to the main menu. The last thing we have to do is to make sure that we're going to be running at 50 Hertz. Now, I'm not sure how to do that inside Hatari right now. I may not be able to do it because I chose the USA keyboard, the USA TOS. It may run at 60 Hertz. That's okay. I would really rather it run at 50. There's a way to set it to set it to 50 using the Stos extension from Missing Link. We may have to do that. The reason I have it set in USA and not UK is because the quotation marks are set up differently on the keyboard. But I may go back to the UK one if that becomes a problem. So after I change that, what we do is we save our config back. So I have a Stos STE config, and this is the one we'll run for all the tutorials, and you can do this too. And like I said, all of this is detailed in much greater detail, easier to follow in the link to the post that's on intotheverticalblank.com, but I'm going to go through it quickly on here so that we can see what's going on. Click on OK. I'm going to make sure I saved that again because I did. Click on OK. And then I'm going to reset the machine. And when I do that, it should reset and come up into my Stos, the hard drive. This is the EMU TOS, and it really is a sort of a TOS 1.62, but it looks different. And one of the things we want to do is save our desktop out with a few options. And one of them is going to be setting the resolution to medium. Once we've done that, we're also going to set to view as text. Makes it easier to use. And you'll see when we double click on our C drive, we have a Stos, GemDOS Stos hard drive set with everything we need to start running Stos. So I'm going to save this desktop configuration right now. So next time it will be saved and ready to go. Now, you'll see in this folder we have quite a number of things. The only thing we can run is basic 208.stos. That's the latest version of Stos Basic. It runs on all ST machines, maybe including the Falcon. I'm pretty sure it does. The game that I redid, the Zamboozled Poker Dice, which is up on AtariMania.com right now, version I think it's 1.2, and it's the 2020 version I recompiled and put up there. It was compiled and created and fixed using this version and the compiler that goes along with it. So what happens when you run Stos Basic is it actually runs this autoexec.bas, and I have it set up to do a few things. One of the things it does is make sure the compiler is ready to go. It also makes sure that we're using the version of the Missing Link extension that we'll get to later, but it's using the registered version to make sure that we can use all of the Missing Link functions. And there's a few other things in this folder, but this is what your root should look like. So let's run Stos right now. and it does a few things, and then it goes to our blank window. Now, I'm not going to be typing any code in this one. I'm going to show the code that is linked in the tutorial, but I'm going to show it very slow, and I'm going to highlight what we're doing in this code. So I'm going to load off of that hard drive. Inside the toots STE folder, I've created a file called blitter1.bas. And we're going to list that out here. So where did this come from? This came from a Stosser disc, a Stosser magazine disc. It's an example by JJ. That's all the information I have at the moment. I'm looking for the actual disc and version and who JJ is. I don't have it, but I will show that in a coming tutorial. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to zoom in on this so that we can see the code a little better in this video, because this is really difficult to see at this point. So let's get this zoomed in. So I have to leave the emulator to do that, and what you'll see is I'm going to zoom into the code a little bit here, kind of move this over, and click on OK. And what you'll see is, so let's go through this line by line. If you're starting to learn Stos for the first time, you're not going to learn all of Stos here. I have links in the post that go directly to the Atari Mania version of the Stos manual and the Stos Game Maker's Guide. Those can help out a lot. But in these tutorials, you will learn a lot of Stos. We're just starting out with targeting the STE, which is a lot different than using regular Stos. And also, we're going to be using the missing link extensions too for certain things. So first of all, line 10. This is a remark statement, so it doesn't really do anything. We're using the Stosser Blitter example by JJ. I actually have modified this slightly. This one just is a simple screen clear, and we'll get to that. Let me move this arrow. What mode 0 does on line 22 is set this to be low resolution mode. Hide will hide the mouse cursor. Flash off will turn off one of the colors is a flashing color. It flashes through all the colors, sort of like an Atari 800 flash. You can actually, it's the same as this cursor you see flashing right here. The cursor flashes through all the colors. It looks a little bit like something you would do on the Atari 800, or even something you might do on the Amiga with copper. But it really just flashes through all the colors, and we don't want to do that. We don't want one of our colors to be flashing. That's used specifically for the flashing cursor, and that's why they have it running. We don't need that when we're running our code. And then curse off turns this cursor off. Now, line 25, reserve as screen 10. What does this do? Okay, so Stos is made up of a bunch of data banks, and 10, data bank 10, can hold anything you want. We're going to store a screen there. The screen is going to be a Degas Elite picture that I think I got off the Degas Elite disc. I don't know where this picture came from. I love this picture though, so we'll see it in a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to reserve a screen. We're going to reserve as a screen 10. 10 is going to be the data bank is going to be in. And the next line, we're doing a standard load and display in Stos. This has nothing to do with the Blitter. The Blitter line comes next. So this is load back1.pi1, and this is in the same toots/ste folder. This file is there. So this is where we have to save our program if we're going to write it and put it in there. We have to save it wherever this file is. So we put this in load back1.pi1 into bank 10. Then we have to get the palette of bank 10. If we don't do that, it will use the standard Stos palette to show your picture, and it will look really ugly. So we want to make sure we get that palette, because that image palette is going to be the one that we would use for all the other things we do inside this program. There are ways to switch the palette in the middle, things like that, and you can switch the palette between screens. But for right now, we're going to be using this palette for whatever we do for these examples. And we're going to use this screen for the most part too, and you'll see the screen. There's a lot we can do with it. Then Stos is broken up into 3 different screens. Physic is the screen that is displayed all the time in the foreground. there are two other screens. There's logic, which is never displayed, but it's where you can do operations and then do a screen swap. And so you won't see the operations as they're being run. And then there's a background screen too. Now the background screen is used when you use Stos sprites. We're not going to use any Stos sprites or any built-in Stos drawing. We're going to be using all Blitter and missing link drawing. We're not going to need background. But you'll see at some point that we will set the background to equal logic, and we'll explain that in a further tutorial. Now, physic equals 10. That means we're just right now changing the physical screen on the display to equal what was loaded into 10. And when this line is run, it will display our background screen that we've loaded in on the foreground right away. Then we're going to wait until someone presses a key. So the user presses a key. That'll be us. And then we're going to do our one blit operation. This comes directly from the Asa Burroughs Blitter extension that I've loaded into both the Stos folder and the compiler folder. We haven't compiled yet, so we don't need that version, but it's there. And we're going to blit CLS physic. All that does is clear the screen. So that's kind of close to just typing the word, I'll show you, typing the word CLS. CLS just clears the screen. But it's totally different when you're using the Blitter chip. When you just type CLS, it goes to every single memory value, and it has to drop a 0 in there to make the screen the background color, or blank. That takes a lot of CPU time. That's actually going, your program that's running is going to wait until that's done. You can't do anything at the same time. If we use blit CLS physic to clear the physical screen with a Blitter operation, it will do that operation using the Blitter chip. And what that does is leave our CPU available to do all the other operations we need. So right now we're not doing anything else, so you can't really see it. But when we get to the further tutorials, we'll be able to see that we'll gain a lot by using the Blitter chip in this way. And for the most of the tutorials we're going to do, we are going to be clearing almost the entire screen or part of the screen using Blitter operations when we draw. So blit CLS physic, and then the word default on line 60. Default does basically this. If you type in default, it clears the screen. Kind of. It actually turns on all the things that we turned off in line 22 and sets it to the mode that we want. The default mode right now is the one we loaded up in, which is the medium resolution. So let's run this and I'll show you what happens. It shows this screen. Now, when we run this, we're getting a little bit of the screen off. So I'm going to pull up this screen a little bit so you can see the entire screen. Let's go over here. There we go. Click on OK. And this is an image that I think was on my Degas Elite disk. I don't know where it came from. If I find out or someone lets me know, I will give full credit. I love this image though. It's very simple. We can use it, parts of it. It's a great background. We also use parts of it to blit later on. We're going to pull off pieces of it and blit it like they're sprites. But it's just the one image that we need to do things with right now for these tutorials. And then if you press the space bar, it's gone. Now there's one thing left to do here is on line set, we're going to make a line 70. That is print Hello World. Oh, it's spelled world wrong. And when we print Hello World on line 70, this is all detailed in the blog post on Into the Vertical Blank again. So you can follow through on that one, or you can follow through right here if you zoom in the screen. We're going to run this the same again. And when you press a thing, it actually says Hello World. So what is a Hello World program that doesn't say Hello World? It was one before we added line 70. So what we do after we have a program we like, we're going to go back and save it. So we're going to F-save. We're going to click on F-save up there, blitter1.bas. And I'm also going to save another copy. I have called Blit1 back. I keep a backup copy. I've accidentally saved and I've trying to load. I've actually saved over these before. It's really easy to do. The interface is not great in Stos. I like it though, but it's not great. It's nothing like we're used to. And then I've saved the backup copy and I've saved that one. So that's it for our first tutorial. Later on, we are going to get to the stoscoders.com VS Code plugin that we're going to use for the rest of the tutorials. That's not in the next one. We're still going to go through 3 or 4 basic Blitter tutorials before we get to looking at that plugin. But for now, that's our first tutorial. Coming in just a couple days will be the second tutorial, and we're not going to have to show all of these basics. We're going to dive directly in to more Blitter operations using the Azaburos Blitter extension. Okay, until next time, into the vertical blank. Into the vertical blank.
An 8-Bit Rocket Studios production.